Bloodlines 2 isn't exactly a game that people are looking forward to. It's more one of those titles that's at the back of your mind. Occasionally you remember, oh yes, Bloodlines 2, that's still coming eventually. I wonder whatever happened to that. And part of it is because of the quality of the game. I mean, everything we've seen, it's looked utterly mediocre. If you had any expectations, they didn't even seem to reach those, the bare minimum. So it's the game itself, but it is also just the marketing, which is non-existent. It seems the Chinese Room and Paradox's strategy is to show you as little of the game as possible. They've worked out, hey, if we show off the game, it's not going to look good. And then people might cancel their pre-order or just not buy it at all. Instead, if we show nothing, there'll at least be some people defending us and saying, oh, you haven't seen the game yet, so you can't bag it out. How could you suggest it's bad until you've spent your money and actually played it for yourself? So they're going for a strategy of don't show, just tell. Just tell people about how great it is, and we'll hope these suckers part with their money and buy it. That seems to be it. Because when did we last actually see gameplay footage? It was back in January, despite the game supposedly coming out this year, which seems unbelievable. It seems like it should be delayed. The only reason I don't think it will be is because the game's been delayed so many times already. Paradox, the publisher, they've already poured so much money into it, changed dev studios. I don't think they can afford to delay it again. So no matter the state it's in, no matter how good or how bad it actually is, I think it has to come out in 2024. Yet they're showing nothing. Nothing at all since January, but instead we're getting these dev diaries. They've continued. And these would be fine if they were alongside extended gameplay reveals, actually getting into the meat of it. But this is it, just text-based articles with the occasional new screenshot. This is all we're getting the rest of this month, I think September as well. When's the game coming out? December at the very latest? How can we not have seen more of this? But anyway, this dev diary came out today, Dialogue Choice Systems, and I'm not going to spend 45 minutes boring you to absolute tears reading the entire thing. It's always a wall of text, these ridiculous things. I'm going to focus on a couple of key areas, but the first thing that caught my eye, so starting off, the summer break is over, and we're back with a juicy dev diary for you. Today, Sarah Longthorne, the Chinese Room senior narrative designer and writer, will delve into the intricacies of our dialogue systems and the thought processes behind their design for Bloodlines 2. So I thought, who's writing this? Sarah Longthorne. Let's look at her experience. She's a senior narrative designer and writer. And if we go on LinkedIn, what's she been doing? Obviously working on Bloodlines 2 since March of 2022. Seems like she worked at Sumo Digital before, who were the owners of the Chinese Room, so they probably told her, go and work on Bloodlines 2, that's your next assignment. But the last time she seems to have had a really senior role anywhere else, it was writer and narrative designer for Love Island the game. I can't even make this up. So we've got an RPG, it's a sequel to an unbelievable classic. People love the writing, the characters in Bloodlines 1. That was always going to make or break the sequel. Can it live up to it when it comes to the RPG systems, the writing, the dialogue, everything like that from Bloodlines 1? Can Bloodlines 2 do it? And the people you've got working on the game, they come from Love Island, the game. So clearly they've hired the best people for the job, experienced heads. I've got complete confidence. But continuing on, the presentation of dialogue options is different in Bloodlines 2. A lot of it stems from the Chinese Room's legacy of celebrating fully realized characterization and empowering voice actors to do more heavy lifting and explore more nuance. These people are paid by the word or something. It's all over convoluted. To give an example, when selecting a dialogue option, players should know exactly what they're opting into. We've all known the frustration of, but that's not what I thought that meant. But the kind of spelling out this requires precludes the ability to lean into the strengths of actors. So basically she's saying people didn't like the Fallout 4 dialogue wheel, essentially. People don't like it when they're playing an RPG and you want to make a dialogue choice, but instead of actually having, say, a sentence or two summarizing what you're going to say, instead you get one or two words. And a perfect example is Bloodlines 2 itself, where previously when they showed us the dialogue, it would be something like this, where Fire, the main character, is going to make a dialogue choice, and our options are tell her everything, reveal the mark, assert your status. Those are the three options, which basically tell you nothing about what you're actually going to say. They try and summarize it in like 3 words. I feel like this was originally done in something like Fallout 4 because they wanted to make sure when you picked a dialogue option, you could do it from your Xbox controller. This was a console design choice, but they wanted you to just be able to pick 1 of 4 options by clicking the A button or the B button, rather than scrolling through a list of choices like we've done in CRPGs in the past. Often you'd have a lot of options. This dumbed things down because it always meant you could only have 4 dialogue options as a maximum, because it had to fit on the controller, picking A, B, X, Y, or whatever. And so you couldn't have like 10 interesting different options, like Planescape Torment. That was a pretty cool RPG. They just wanted to dumb it down. Now, this person, Sarah Longthorn, she acknowledges that the Fallout 4 dialogue wheel, we'll call it, has limitations. But then she says if we spell out what your character is actually going to say, this precludes the ability to lean into the strengths of actors. How does that make any sense? Like, what? Like, how would it even make a difference? This is like a UI thing, a UI problem. And she says that. She even says next, this would also have caused problems for UI, which is also dumb. But the strengths of actors, like, you give them the dialogue to say, you put it into the game, and then it's just about, all right, well, does the player get to see everything that the actor is going to say, the character's going to say, or do they just choose from a couple of words, as we saw here, tell her everything and so on? I don't know what that means. It precludes the ability to lean into the strengths of actors. Seems like an excuse. As is saying that it causes problems for UI. That's your problem. You are the developers. Figure out a solution. It's been done in plenty of CRPGs successfully, and I really think the only challenge is getting it working for console. That's the issue. On PC, it's fine because you can just scroll through options with your mouse wheel, but it seems like you're worried about making it all too hard and confusing for console players. I will say this though, regardless of UI problems, I can guarantee that no one wants you to dumb down the dialogue choices, dumb down the whole game, just to make the UI a bit cleaner. That's dumb. Just figure it out. That's your job. And she goes on to say, ultimately, the needs of the player were integral. Players should have all the information they need about their selected option and should feel confident in their choice, while the actor is allowed more playfulness in following that directive. I think the main thing is just ensuring tone is captured. So the main weakness I see is when you only have a couple of words summarizing what your dialogue choice is going to be, like when it just says tell her everything, it's really annoying when you pick that option, which you think is just kind of neutral, and then your character is aggressively yelling at the character. Like, this was the angry choice. And if I had have just picked reveal the mark, it would have been something more neutral, something nicer. It is annoying when the tone isn't captured. So that's the main thing. And normally when there is more detail on your dialogue choice, you can pick that tone up a lot easier. But given she's criticizing the old dialogue system and sort of talking down how it's a bit dumbed down, it's a bit lame, you would assume they're making some changes, and that is exactly right. So she says here, seeing as you're reading a dev diary, I assume that means you've seen some game materials that we have already shared, which means you'll have noticed an early result of the above dilemma, exactly like this screenshot with the limited options. We initially toyed with representing our dialogue choices in summary to make the intention of the branch abundantly clear and lead harder into our strategic approach to roleplay. More on that shortly. Now this is kind of baffling to read because it kind of says we did it the right way first, and then we thought, hey, I've got a great idea. Let's ruin it and do the Fallout 4 system that no one liked, that everyone criticized. Even Todd Howard himself has admitted that the Fallout 4 dialogue, tree wheel, whatever, was a mistake. Starfield, for all of its problems, tried to fix that. They went back to like the Fallout 3 style of dialogue where it was a little bit more detailed. Even Starfield was trying to do things more right than this. And you got it right, it sounds like. You were doing it the right way, and then you went, nah, let's throw that out, make a big mistake, do it the wrong way. Which means that they're chopping and changing multiple times, because the purpose of this diary, as she says, this quickly revealed itself as the wrong direction. So dumbing it down was the wrong direction. So you've changed 2-3 different times. And she says, not just because you guys rightly said so. So we didn't change this because of your negative feedback. Come on, like what else was it really? Getting into the weeds of our conversations, I found that the choices on offer felt samey when viewed from above, even when the content was entirely different. Zoom too far out and you lose fine detail, which is where your flavor lies. Just a lot of words to basically say, we made a mistake. When you dumb down the dialogue, it kills the dialogue choices because you don't know what you're going to be picking. Like, you have the options there. They don't represent what the character's going to say. It doesn't work. Other developers learned this a decade ago, and you've gone and made the same mistakes. This is the weird thing to me, and the only real conclusion I can have is none of these people have actually played any, or at least many, role-playing games. And I think that shows from the team. Like, if you look them up on LinkedIn, go through the different team members, there is not a lot of role-playing game experience here. And I would consider making a bet as to how many of these people have actually played Bloodlines 1 all the way through and understand what it's about. I imagine that there's some of them who actually wear it as a badge of honor, that I haven't played Bloodlines 1. I'm ready to ignore the source material, essentially ignore the game that we're making a sequel to, because I can do such a better job. Who cares about that original? It was probably misogynistic. It's probably racist. Forget all of that. I'm just going to do it my own way. We see that all the time with the Witcher TV show, plenty of other Netflix, Amazon adaptations, and they all end up being a disaster. Who would have thought? So I don't think many of these people at all have actually played role-playing games, given they're making just basic errors that people already realized were stupid ideas years and years ago, with Fallout 4 and other titles from that era, which were really designed more so for console than PC, dialogue wheels, and so on. But she says, we settled on a compromise, the tried and true next best thing. Paraphrase speech. But what about the content of these choices? Remember what I said about strategies? The best way to approach choice design is to look at your theme. In Bloodlines 1, your options are a mixture of strategy and humanity, with other options thrown into honor, for example, your clan. The same is true in other titles. In Baldur's Gate 3, choice options are themed roughly around a simplified version of the morality alignment seen in D&D, and in Telltale's The Walking Dead. They are themed around the central question of, do you have to be cruel to survive? I've got to be honest here. Now, I know she's just talking about picking dialogue options here, and this is a writer, not necessarily someone who develops the RPG mechanics, but when someone says that they're picking The Walking Dead as an influence, I have to question that, because Telltale games, I like some of them, Tales of Monkey Island, some of their earlier games that were real adventure games, but as far as I understand it, The Walking Dead is one of those games where your choices don't really matter. You get dialogue choices, and it seems like there's some smoke and mirrors that your choices will have some meaning, but normally they do not matter. And they are just fluff to make you feel like something may change, but nothing ever does. Are you telling me that this will be the case in Bloodlines 2, where you do a lot of this writing, a lot of dialogue choices that seem interesting, but none of them actually have any effect on gameplay? Because for me, in RPGs, that's honestly one of my favorite parts, is when you make these choices, that it does change up the game in some way. Maybe it means different solutions for quests. If I make a certain dialogue choice, maybe it will influence that person. They may want to help me, or they may not want to help me at all. It could open up some different solutions. That's what I care about. How do my choices actually affect the game? Not just fluff, but actual choice and consequence. And again, she doesn't say that it's going to be exactly like the Walking Dead game. I just have a bad feeling, and the reason also is this is so long. This person writes forever. I don't know if it's her writing or if it's ChatGPT or something. But what she essentially starts doing is just going overboard. Again, a wall of text here. She basically goes into how complex all of these dialogue choices are. The different characters are going to be able to detect your sarcasm. Perhaps the bruiser you're bullying was a blush of life. Reactions to your choices are not uniform, but unique to the NPC and their unique disposition. Now, all this is fine. If this was all genuinely in the game, and it's so complex, so many different choices, limitless, it's going to be fantastic. All of this is totally fine if it was actually in the game. But I have a couple of issues. The first thing is, I understand the limitations of video games. This isn't a pen and paper RPG with your friends, where you can use your imagination, you can say anything, you can do anything basically. It is a computer game at the end of the day, and that means the writers have to actually program those choices into the game, and they need to have some sort of consequence, usually, unless we are actually going to go full Telltale Walking Dead, where choices don't really matter, they're just fluff. So my concern with them talking about how complex it's all going to be and all these different options is that a lot of your choices just won't matter really at all. They're just going to go full Walking Dead. You'll say something, maybe the character has a different response. We can see here in these screenshots, Lou was irritated by that. Lou was pleased by that. But is that actually going to matter? Is that going to affect the game in any way? Or is it literally just going to be a bit of text on the screen to say the character wasn't happy, but then the game plays out exactly the same way as it would anyway? And remember that the Chinese Room, even though this team hasn't made walking sims, it's a new team just for Bloodlines 2, the Chinese Room are known for walking sims, where you play through exactly like a novel, and none of your choices matter at all, really. Not at least from the games I've played from them. And I've played some, like the Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, I think it was. Still Waits the Deep. That's their new game. Haven't played it. It looks okay for what it is, a walking sim, but this is meant to be the sequel to Bloodlines. It's meant to be full-on role-playing game. Choices have consequences. Not seeing that here. I think it more so is going to be making dialogue choices, seeing some text on the screen that explains what your character's reaction to that was, because it's not going to come across in facial expressions. They look pretty lame, which is funny because the original Bloodlines 1 had incredible facial animations ahead of their time. I actually think they still hold up from playing it earlier this year, but all I really get from this dev diary is that you're a team of amateurs, you make basic mistakes that other dev teams learned from over 10 years ago. I'll repeat what I've said many times now. If this game comes out in 2024, I can't fathom a world where it's even mildly acceptable. I think it's going to be broken, features are going to be missing. If you thought the first was broken and unplayable, this may be even more of a joke in that department. It needs a delay. Even still, just what they're talking about, it sounds like a walking sim all over. The dialogue choices seem to be much more about flavor and fluff and more about just what you're reading on the screen, not really translating to gameplay like we've come to expect from our favorite RPGs, especially Bloodlines 1, where there are plenty of choices and consequences. I don't think we're going to get a lot of that in this. It's just going to be full-on walking sim. Whatever comes out, it's not even going to resemble Bloodlines 1. But we'll find out more, I'm sure, in the next exciting dev diary. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.